The sky wept over Johnson City, Texas, as Daisy Lancaster hammered nails into her leaking roof with the ferocity of a woman who had endured too much heartbreak. Rain poured through the gaps, soaking the floorboards of the modest home she had inherited after her husband's death 3 years prior. At 32, Daisy had resigned herself to solitude in this small frontier town of 1872, convinced that love was a luxury not meant for widows with calloused hands and weary hearts. "Blasted roof!" she shouted as her hammer slipped, sending her sliding down the slick shingles. She caught herself at the edge, her honey-brown hair plastered to her face, her dress soaked through. The storm showed no mercy, much like life itself had shown her little kindness since James died from fever, leaving her with nothing but debt and memories. Daisy climbed down the ladder with trembling legs, conceding defeat to the storm. Inside, pots and pans dotted the floor, catching drips from the ceiling while she changed into dry clothes. She stoked the fire and wrapped herself in a quilt, listening to the symphony of raindrops hitting metal. Tomorrow would bring more work, more struggle, and the same hollow emptiness that had become her constant companion. Morning arrived with surprising brightness, the storm having passed but leaving destruction in its wake. Daisy assessed the damage: 3 new leaks and a portion of the roof that had partially collapsed into her spare room. With a sigh, she pinned up her hair, donned her work dress, and began clearing debris. Her neighbor, elderly Mrs. Whittaker, came by with fresh biscuits around noon. "Daisy, dear, you can't fix that roof yourself. It's too dangerous." "I don't have money to hire help, Martha," Daisy said, accepting a biscuit with a grateful smile. "Besides, who in Johnson City would work for promises of payment?" "There's a cattle drive passing through," Martha said, her eyes twinkling with something that made Daisy instantly suspicious. "Strong cowboys with strong backs." "No," Daisy said firmly. "I won't be accepting charity or pity from strangers." Martha patted her hand. "Pride won't keep you dry, dear." After Martha left, Daisy returned to her impossible task, hauling wood from the shed and attempting to assess what materials she would need. The general store might extend her credit again, though Mr. Peterson had been increasingly reluctant as her teaching position at the schoolhouse barely covered her existing expenses. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the rider approaching until his shadow fell across her yard. She looked up, squinting against the sun, to see a tall man astride a magnificent chestnut stallion. "Afternoon, madam," he said, removing his hat to reveal hair the color of wheat fields at sunset. His eyes were a startling blue against his sun-bronzed skin. "Looks like that storm did you no favors." Daisy straightened, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "I'm managing just fine, thank you. Begging your pardon, but that roof needs more than managing." He dismounted with fluid grace that spoke of years in the saddle. "Name's Tucker James. I'm with the Barton Cattle Drive heading to San Antonio." "Mrs. Lancaster," she replied stiffly. "Daisy Lancaster." "Mrs. Lancaster," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Martha Whittaker mentioned you might need some assistance. I've got experience with carpentry." Of course Martha had meddled. Daisy felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. James, but I cannot pay for repairs at present." Tucker's smile revealed a dimple in his right cheek. "I'm not asking for payment, madam, just doing a good turn. Besides, our drive's delayed a few days while the trail dries out." "I've got time." "I don't accept charity," Daisy said, lifting her chin. "Not charity," he countered easily. "Maybe just breakfast while I'm working. I've been eating trail food for weeks, and Martha says you make the best flapjacks in 3 counties. Daisy couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. "Martha exaggerates." "Then prove me wrong," Tucker challenged with good humor. "I'll start on the roof. You decide if you want to feed me tomorrow." Before she could formulate another protest, Tucker had tied his horse to the fence post and was examining the damaged roof with a professional eye. "You'll need new shingles," he called down. "And that support beam is cracked." Daisy watched him, bewildered by his presumption yet unable to deny the relief she felt. "Mr. Peterson at the general store might extend me credit for materials." "I've got connections," Tucker said. "Let me handle it." Against her better judgment, Daisy found herself nodding. "Just until the roof is fixed," she clarified. "Then you'll be on your way." Tucker grinned, the expression transforming his face from merely handsome to devastatingly so. "Yes, madam. Now about those flapjacks." "Tomorrow," she conceded. 7 o'clock sharp." True to his word, Tucker returned the next morning with a wagon full of lumber, shingles, and tools. He brought another man with him, a fellow cowboy named Silas who tipped his hat respectfully and spoke little. Daisy had risen before dawn to prepare a breakfast worthy of the help. The scent of coffee, flapjacks, bacon, and eggs filled her small kitchen. When the men came in from unloading supplies, she had the table set with her best dishes, chipped though they were. "Mrs. Lancaster," Tucker said, washing his hands in the basin by the door, "this smells like heaven itself." Silas nodded enthusiastically, his eyes wide at the spread. "It's nothing fancy," she demurred. "Please, eat before it gets cold." The men needed no further invitation, falling upon the food with appreciation that bordered on reverence. Daisy found herself enjoying their company, particularly Tucker's easy conversation and genuine interest in her life in Johnson City. "How long have you been teaching?" he asked, sopping up egg yolk with a piece of bread. 5 years, she replied. "I started after moving here with my husband. When he passed, the school board allowed me to continue." "You like teaching the young uns?" "I do," she said, surprised by his interest. "Though resources are limited, we need more books, and the building itself needs repairs almost as badly as my roof." Tucker listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about her students and teaching methods. In turn, he shared stories of the cattle drive, painting vivid pictures of life on the trail that made her laugh despite herself. After breakfast, the men set to work. Daisy returned to her daily chores, occasionally stealing glances at Tucker as he moved confidently across her roof. His competence was undeniable, and by midday, the damaged section had been completely removed. "Mrs. Lancaster," he called down. "Would you mind bringing some water when you've a moment?" She filled a pitcher and brought 2 cups outside. Tucker climbed down, his shirt clinging to his broad shoulders with sweat. Daisy averted her eyes, passing him a cup which he drained gratefully. "Thank you kindly," he said. "Your roof's in worse shape than I thought. Might take 3 days instead of 2. "I couldn't possibly ask you to spend so much time." "You're not asking," he interrupted gently. "I'm offering. Besides, Silas and I are getting the best meals we've had in months." As if on cue, her stomach growled and Tucker laughed. "Seems like you've worked up an appetite too. Let me wash up and I'll help you prepare lunch." "That's not necessary," Daisy protested. "I insist. My mother raised me to pull my weight in a kitchen, not just on a horse." To her surprise, Tucker proved quite capable, slicing bread and cheese while she made a simple stew with vegetables from her garden. They worked together with unexpected ease, and Daisy found herself relaxing in his presence. "You've been alone since your husband passed?" he asked as they prepared the meal. "Yes," she answered, her knife pausing over an onion. "James died 3 winters ago. Pneumonia took him quickly." "I'm sorry," Tucker said, his voice soft with genuine sympathy. "That must have been difficult." "Life is often difficult," she said, resuming her chopping. "One endures." "True enough," Tucker agreed. But enduring alone isn't the same as living, Mrs. Lancaster. Daisy looked up, meeting his gaze. Something in his eyes made her heart flutter in a way it hadn't in years. Perhaps not, she conceded, but it's safer. Tucker seemed about to respond when Silas called from outside, breaking the moment. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity, with Daisy teaching her afternoon classes while the men continued working. When she returned, significant progress had been made. "We'll be back tomorrow," Tucker promised as they departed for the evening. "Same time." "Yes," Daisy agreed, finding herself looking forward to it more than she should. The next morning, Daisy woke early again, this time adding fresh biscuits and honey to the breakfast menu. She had just finished setting the table when a knock came at the door. Tucker stood there, hat in hand, looking surprisingly clean-shaven and freshly dressed. "Good morning," he said, a smile lighting his features. "Something smells amazing." "Just breakfast," she said, stepping back to let him enter. "Where's Silas?" "Had other duties today," Tucker explained. "Hope you don't mind if it's just me." Daisy felt a flutter of nervous energy. "Not at all. There's plenty of food." They ate together, the conversation flowing more easily than the day before. Tucker told her about his ranch in the Texas Hill Country, which his brother was managing while he helped with the cattle drive. "It's not large," he said, "but it's mine. Took me 10 years to save enough to buy it." "That's impressive," Daisy said sincerely. "You must be very proud." "I am," he acknowledged, "though it gets lonely sometimes. A ranch needs a family to truly feel like home." His eyes held hers for a moment too long, and Daisy felt heat rise to her cheeks. She busied herself clearing dishes. "I should let you get to work." Tucker helped her clean up before heading to the roof. Throughout the day, Daisy found her attention repeatedly drawn to him as she tended her garden and did laundry. The easy strength with which he moved, the occasional snippets of song that drifted down as he worked, all of it was distractingly appealing. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Daisy looked up anxiously. "Mr. James, there's another storm coming." Tucker surveyed the sky. "We've got an hour, maybe less. I can get the worst part covered if I hurry." He worked with increased intensity while Daisy brought in her laundry and secured items around the yard. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. Just as the first fat droplets began to fall, Tucker descended the ladder. "Inside," he called, gathering his tools. They barely made it through the door when the skies opened, rain falling in sheets. "Will your work hold?" Daisy asked, peering through the window at the deluge. "Should do," Tucker said, running a hand through his hair. "I got the critical section waterproofed. We can test it by checking for leaks." They moved through the house, Daisy holding a lamp while Tucker examined the ceiling in each room. To her relief, the previously leaking areas remained dry. "You did it," she said, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Tucker's smile was warm. "We got lucky with the timing. I'll finish properly tomorrow, weather permitting." Outside, the storm intensified, thunder cracking overhead. "You shouldn't travel in this," Daisy said reluctantly. "It's too dangerous." "I don't want to impose. You've been sleeping at the camp outside town." Tucker nodded. "With the cattle drive crew. Then staying here is the sensible option," she said firmly, though her heart raced at the impropriety. "I have a spare room." The spare room, unfortunately, was the one with the collapsed ceiling section. Though Tucker had repaired the exterior, the interior still showed significant damage. "This won't do," Daisy said, surveying the wet floorboards and exposed beams. "You can take my room. I'll sleep on the settee in the parlor." "Absolutely not," Tucker protested. "I'll take the settee." "But you're too tall, Mrs. Lancaster," he interrupted gently. "You've already shown me incredible hospitality. I won't displace you from your bed." Recognizing the futility of argument, Daisy acquiesced. She provided him with blankets and a pillow, then prepared a simple supper from the remains of yesterday's stew. They ate by lamplight as rain drummed against the windows, creating an unexpectedly intimate atmosphere. "Tell me about your students," Tucker requested as they finished their meal. Daisy smiled, always eager to discuss her pupils. "They're wonderful, mostly. 23 children ranging from 6 to 16 years. Some only attend when they're not needed on farms, especially the older boys." "And what do you teach them?" "Reading, writing, arithmetic, history," she listed. "And anything else they show interest in. Bobby Miller is fascinated by maps, so I've been teaching him geography. Little Sarah Williams loves poetry and memorizes everything I recite." Tucker watched her with obvious admiration. "You care deeply about them." "They're the future of Johnson City," she said simply. "They deserve every opportunity." "And what about your future?" he asked, his voice softening. "What does Daisy Lancaster want for herself?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked about her dreams in so long. "I'm not sure anymore," she admitted. "Once, I thought I'd have a family, children of my own. After James died, I focused on survival. And now," Daisy looked at him, this stranger who had inserted himself into her life so suddenly yet felt inexplicably familiar. "Now I'm beginning to remember there might be more to life than merely surviving." Lightning flashed, illuminating Tucker's face, his expression so tender it made her breath catch. Thunder followed immediately, breaking the spell. "I should retire," Daisy said, standing abruptly. "Morning comes early." "Of course," Tucker agreed. "Thank you for dinner. And the shelter." Daisy retreated to her bedroom, her emotions in turmoil. She changed into her nightdress and brushed her hair with trembling hands. The knowledge that Tucker James was just on the other side of her wall made sleep elusive. When it finally came, her dreams were filled with blue eyes and gentle hands. Morning arrived with clear skies and birdsong. Daisy rose early, dressing carefully before entering the kitchen. To her surprise, Tucker was already awake, coffee brewed and bacon sizzling in her cast-iron skillet. "Good morning," he greeted cheerfully. "Hope you don't mind. Thought I'd get breakfast started to thank you for the accommodations." "That's very thoughtful," she managed, flustered by this domestic scene. They ate together in companionable silence, the events of yesterday creating an unspoken connection between them. Afterward, Tucker returned to the roof while Daisy prepared for her school day. "I'll be gone until mid-afternoon," she told him, gathering her books and papers. "Please help yourself to anything you need." Tucker tipped his hat. "I'll have this roof finished by the time you return, Mrs. Lancaster." "Daisy," she said impulsively. "If you're fixing my roof and cooking in my kitchen, you might as well use my given name." His smile warmed her more than the morning sun. "Daisy it is, then, and I'm Tucker." The school day passed in a blur of arithmetic lessons and spelling tests, but Daisy found her thoughts repeatedly wandering to her home and the man working there. Her colleague, Miss Perkins, noticed her distraction. "Are you feeling well, Mrs. Lancaster? You seem flushed." "Just the heat," Daisy demurred, though the spring day was mild. When school ended, Daisy found herself hurrying home with unusual eagerness. As promised, Tucker had completed the roof repairs. He was in the yard, splitting firewood with powerful strokes when she arrived. "You didn't need to do that," she said, setting down her books. Tucker embedded the axe in the chopping block and wiped his brow. "Wanted to make myself useful. Roof's all done. Want to inspect my work." They walked around the house together, Tucker pointing out the improvements he'd made. "Should hold for years now, especially with these reinforcements." "I don't know how to thank you," Daisy said, genuinely moved by his generosity. "No need for thanks," Tucker replied. but I wouldn't say no to one more meal before I head back to the drive tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word landed like a stone in Daisy's stomach. Of course, he was leaving. That had been the arrangement from the start. Why, then, did it fill her with such unexpected sadness? "I'd be happy to cook dinner," she said, masking her emotions. "It's the least I can do." They prepared the meal together, moving around her small kitchen with the coordination of long-time partners rather than recent acquaintances. Tucker recounted amusing tales from his years as a cowboy, making Daisy laugh until her sides ached. When they sat down to eat, the food was almost secondary to the pleasure of their conversation. "The cattle drive continues tomorrow?" Daisy asked, trying to sound merely conversational. Tucker nodded. "We've been delayed long enough. The trail should be dry enough now." "Of course," she said. "You must be eager to get back to your ranch eventually." "Parts of it," he said, his eyes holding hers. "Though I'm finding Johnson City has its own particular appeal." Daisy looked down at her plate, her heart racing. "It's a simple town." "Sometimes simple is exactly what a man needs," Tucker said softly. After dinner, they sat on her small porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Crickets began their evening chorus, and somewhere in the distance, a whippoorwill called. "When I first arrived," Tucker said, breaking a comfortable silence, "you said you don't accept charity." "I don't," Daisy confirmed. "Good," he said, turning to face her, "because what I'm about to propose isn't charity at all." Daisy's breath caught. "What are you proposing, Mr. James?" "I'd like to call on you properly," he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "Write to you from the trail. Visit when I return through Johnson City on my way home." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Tucker smiled. "Because in 3 days, you've reminded me what it feels like to look forward to morning. Because your laugh makes me want to be funnier than I am. Because you're the strongest, most independent woman I've ever met, and I find that I don't want to leave tomorrow without knowing I'll see you again." Daisy's heart thundered in her chest. "We barely know each other." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you love your students like they're your own. I know you're stubborn enough to climb on a roof during a storm. I know you make flapjacks that would make angels weep. And I know I'd like the chance to learn everything else. I haven't thought about any man since James died," she admitted. Tucker reached for her hand, his touch gentle but electric. "I'm not asking for promises, Daisy, just permission to write, to visit. To see where this feeling might lead." Daisy looked at their joined hands, then up at Tucker's earnest face. Something that had been dormant inside her for 3 years stirred to life, hope, fragile but persistent. "Yes," she whispered. "You may write to me." The smile that illuminated Tucker's face was brighter than any lamp. "I'll make you proud of that decision." They sat together until stars appeared, talking of small things and large, his dreams for his ranch, her hopes for her students, books they'd read, places they'd seen. When Daisy finally stood to retire, she felt as though she'd known Tucker James her entire life. "Good night," she said at her bedroom door. Tucker bowed slightly. "Sweet dreams, Daisy Lancaster." Morning came too quickly. Daisy prepared a hearty breakfast, trying not to think about the emptiness her house would hold once Tucker departed. He ate with appreciation, complimenting every dish as though it were his last meal. "The cattle drive will reach San Antonio in about 2 weeks," he explained as they cleared the table. "I'll send my first letter from there." "I'll look forward to it," Daisy said, surprising herself with her sincerity. Tucker collected his few belongings and saddled his horse. Standing in her yard, he seemed reluctant to mount. "Thank you," Daisy said, "for fixing my roof and for staying for breakfast." Tucker smiled at the simplification. "Thank you for letting me." He stepped closer, his eyes asking a question. Daisy gave the slightest nod, and Tucker leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her cheek. His lips were warm, his touch respectful yet promising. "Until we meet again," he said softly. Daisy watched him ride away, her hand touching the spot where his lips had been. Only after his figure disappeared down the road did she realize she was smiling. The days following Tucker's departure felt strangely empty. Daisy threw herself into her teaching, creating new lessons and spending extra time with students who needed assistance. At home, she kept busy with spring cleaning and garden preparation, but her thoughts frequently drifted to the cowboy who had fixed more than just her roof. Martha Whittaker visited often, not even attempting to hide her interest in the situation. "He was quite handsome," she remarked, helping Daisy plant tomatoes, "and clearly smitten with you." "He was kind to help with the repairs," Daisy deflected. Martha snorted. "Kindness doesn't make a man look at a woman the way that cowboy looked at you." Daisy couldn't suppress her blush. "He's going to write to me." Martha's eyes widened with delight. "I knew it." "Oh, Daisy, this is wonderful." "It's just correspondence," Daisy cautioned. "Nothing more." But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't entirely true. Something had awakened within her, something she had thought died with James. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Tucker's first letter arrived exactly when he'd promised, carried by the stagecoach from San Antonio. Daisy's hands trembled as she broke the seal. "Dear Daisy, the cattle drive reached San Antonio yesterday, all beasts accounted for despite the weather delays. The journey was uneventful, which in our line of work is the highest praise possible. I find myself grateful for the smooth passage, yet strangely disappointed that no emergency arose requiring a return to Johnson City. The city is bustling with activity, but I find my thoughts constantly returning to your quiet porch and our conversations. I've visited the bookshop here and enclosed a volume of poetry I thought you might enjoy sharing with young Sarah Williams. Perhaps you'll tell me which verses are her favorites when next we meet. I'll remain in San Antonio for 1 week before continuing to my ranch. If you would do me the honor of replying, a letter sent to the address below will reach me. With warmest regards." Tucker James enclosed was a beautifully bound collection of Wordsworth's poems. Daisy ran her fingers over the embossed cover, deeply touched by his thoughtfulness. That evening she composed a reply, careful not to reveal too much of her growing feelings yet wanting to encourage his continued correspondence. Over the following weeks, their letters flew back and forth. Tucker wrote of his ranch, his dreams for expanding it, the foal born to his favorite mare. Daisy shared stories of her students, the progress of her garden, and the gossip of Johnson City. With each exchange, their connection deepened, their letters growing longer and more personal. In his 4th letter, Tucker wrote, "I find myself counting the days until the autumn drive, when our route will bring me through Johnson City again. 3 months seems an eternity when I think of your smile, yet the anticipation makes each day sweeter." Daisy read those words repeatedly, her heart fluttering like a schoolgirl's. She had never expected to feel this way again, this mixture of excitement, anxiety, and longing. Her reply was equally revealing. "Johnson City seems quieter without your presence, though logic tells me it is unchanged. Perhaps it is I who am different. Your letters have become the brightest part of my weeks, and I too find myself looking forward to autumn with unprecedented eagerness." Summer arrived with scorching heat. Daisy's school term ended, giving her more time for household improvements. Inspired by Tucker's repairs, she painted her porch railing and planted flowers along the walkway. Martha teased her mercilessly about fixing up for her cowboy, but Daisy couldn't deny the truth in her friend's words. In late July, An unexpected letter arrived, this one sent from a town much closer than Tucker's ranch. "Dearest Daisy, fortune smiles upon us. A neighboring rancher has hired me to help deliver horses to the Army outpost near Austin. My route will bring me within 20 miles of Johnson City next week. If it wouldn't be presumptuous, I would very much like to make a slight detour to call on you. I understand this is earlier than expected and will take no offense if the timing is inconvenient. A note to the Caldwell stables in Austin will reach me promptly. Hopefully yours." Tucker. Daisy's heart raced as she read. Tucker, coming to Johnson City in just days. She penned her reply immediately, trying to balance propriety with the genuine excitement she felt. "Dear Tucker, your news is most welcome. A visit would be no imposition at all. The school term has ended, leaving my days quite free. Please know you are welcome whenever your travels permit. Sincerely, Daisy." She posted the letter the same day, then immediately began fretting about her appearance, her home, and what she might cook for him. 4 days of anxious preparation followed before a familiar figure on a chestnut horse appeared on the horizon. Daisy watched from her porch as Tucker approached, her hands smoothing her best dress nervously. He looked even more handsome than she remembered, his skin bronzed from summer sun, his smile brilliant as he dismounted. "Miss Lancaster," he greeted, removing his hat. "Mr. James," she returned, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice for a moment. They simply looked at each other, the weeks of correspondence creating a tension that was almost palpable. Then Tucker stepped forward, taking her hand and raising it to his lips in a gesture that sent heat racing through her. "You're even lovelier than I remembered," he said softly. Daisy blushed. "You must be tired from your journey. Please come inside. I've prepared refreshments." They settled on her porch with lemonade and fresh baked cookies, falling into conversation as easily as if they'd never been apart. Tucker spoke of his journey, the horses he was delivering, the improvements to his ranch. Daisy shared news of her students' progress and her summer activities. "Your roof has held up well?" Tucker asked with a teasing smile. "Perfectly," she confirmed. "The craftsman knew his trade." "I'm glad to hear it," he said. "I've thought often of those days here. They were special to me." Daisy met his gaze. "To me as well." Tucker stayed for dinner, then reluctantly announced he needed to find accommodation in town for the night before continuing his journey tomorrow. "The Wilsons rent rooms," Daisy suggested. "They're just past the church." "I'll head there directly," Tucker said, though he made no move to leave. "Daisy, He hesitated, then continued. "These past months of correspondence have meant more to me than I can express." "They've meant a great deal to me too," she admitted. Tucker took her hand again. "I know this is forward, but I need to ask, do you feel what's growing between us? This connection that seems to deepen with every letter, every conversation." Daisy's heart pounded. "Yes," she whispered. "I do." Relief washed over his features. "Then I'm not imagining it." "No," she said. "You're not." Tucker stepped closer, his eyes searching hers for permission. When Daisy didn't pull away, he gently cupped her face and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was tender, questioning, a first exploration that made Daisy's knees weaken. When they parted, both were breathless. "I should go," Tucker said reluctantly, "before I forget myself entirely." Daisy nodded, though every part of her wished he could stay. "Will I see you tomorrow before you leave? Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he promised. "Breakfast?" 7 o'clock, she agreed with a smile. "Sharp." Tucker returned the next morning bearing wildflowers picked from the meadow outside town. Breakfast was both wonderful and bittersweet, their conversation flowing easily but shadowed by his imminent departure. "I'll write as soon as I reach the outpost," Tucker promised as he prepared to leave. "I'll look forward to it," Daisy said, standing close enough to catch his familiar scent of leather and pine. Tucker kissed her again, this time with greater confidence. The autumn drive can't come soon enough. As she watched him ride away, Daisy felt not the emptiness of their first parting, but a warm certainty. Whatever was growing between them was real and worth nurturing, however slowly. Summer faded into autumn, their correspondence continuing unabated. Tucker's letters grew increasingly affectionate, and Daisy found herself responding in kind. When he wrote of his plans to expand his ranch house, she offered suggestions about the kitchen layout. When she mentioned difficulties with a particular student, he provided insights from his own schoolboy days. By the time September turned the leaves golden, they had shared more of themselves through ink and paper than many couples who saw each other daily. The anticipation of Tucker's arrival with the cattle drive became the talk of Johnson City, thanks largely to Martha's inability to keep anything to herself. "The whole town knows your cowboy is returning," she informed Daisy during their weekly tea. "Mrs. Peterson is planning to bake a special cake for the occasion." "He's not my cowboy," Daisy protested weakly. Martha's eyebrows rose. "No. Then I suppose you've been pressing wildflowers from every gentleman caller's bouquet." Daisy blushed, unable to deny the evidence Martha had spotted in her Bible. "It's still new perhaps, but serious nonetheless," Martha said knowingly. "I haven't seen you this alive since before James passed." The observation startled Daisy. Was it true? Had she been merely existing these past years? Reflecting on the months since Tucker first rode into her yard, she couldn't deny the change in herself, the return of laughter, of dreams, of possibilities. The cattle drive arrived in early October, bringing with it the man who had come to occupy so much of Daisy's thoughts. This time, their reunion occurred in the town square, with half of Johnson City watching avidly as Tucker dismounted and approached her. "Miss Lancaster," he said formally, though his eyes danced with private meaning. "Mr. James," she returned. "Welcome back to Johnson City." "It's good to be back," he said, "though I'm afraid I'm in need of accommodations again." "The Wilsons still rent rooms," she suggested, conscious of the audience. Tucker nodded. "Perhaps I might call on you tomorrow, once I'm settled." "I would like that very much." Their public interaction was brief, but the electricity between them was unmistakable. When Tucker appeared at her door the following afternoon, freshly bathed and wearing his best shirt, Daisy was ready with a special dinner and her own carefully chosen attire. "You look beautiful," he said, presenting another bouquet of wildflowers. "Thank you," she replied, taking the flowers. "Please, come in." They spent the evening in deep conversation, Tucker sharing news of his ranch and the cattle drive, Daisy updating him on her school and the town happenings. As night fell, they moved to the porch swing, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. "The drive moves on in 3 days," Tucker said, breaking a comfortable silence. "So soon?" Daisy couldn't hide her disappointment. Tucker turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Daisy, I've been thinking about us, about what we've been building through our letters and these brief visits." Her heart quickened, as have I. "I don't want to leave in 3 days and wait months to see you again," he said earnestly. "I want more." "What are you saying, Tucker?" He took a deep breath. "I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, Daisy Lancaster. Your intelligence, your strength, your kindness, everything about you has captured my heart completely." Tears sprang to Daisy's eyes. "Tucker, I know it's sudden," he continued quickly. "And I know you might need time, but I wanted you to know the truth of my feelings before I leave." Daisy squeezed his hands. "It's not sudden at all," she whispered. "Not when I've been falling in love with you through every letter, every memory, every moment since you first fixed my roof and stayed for breakfast." The joy that illuminated Tucker's face was breathtaking. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left no doubt of his feelings. When they finally parted, both were trembling. "I have to go with the drive," Tucker said regretfully. "My commitment, I understand," Daisy assured him. "Your responsibilities are important. But I'll return," he promised fervently. "As soon as the cattle are delivered, I'll come back to Johnson City." "To you." The 3 days that followed were precious beyond measure. Tucker spent every available moment with Daisy, their connection deepening with each conversation, each shared meal, each tentative exploration of their feelings. When the time came for the cattle drive to continue, their parting was bittersweet. "6 weeks," Tucker said, holding her close. "I'll be back in 6 weeks." Daisy nodded against his chest, memorizing his heartbeat. "I'll be waiting." True to his word, Tucker wrote from every stop along the drive's route. His letters now openly declared his love, describing his plans for their future together if she would have him. Daisy responded with equal fervor, her initial caution replaced by certainty that what they shared was genuine and lasting. November brought the first frost to Johnson City, and with it, Tucker James, riding hard ahead of a brewing winter storm. Daisy had been watching for him from her window and rushed onto the porch when she spotted his approach. He barely waited for his horse to stop before dismounting and sweeping her into his arms. "I missed you," he breathed against her hair. "And I you," she replied, clinging to him despite the cold. Inside, they warmed themselves by the fire, their hands rarely leaving each other as they shared news of the weeks apart. When they had exhausted conversation, Tucker suddenly grew serious. "Daisy," he began, reaching for her hands. "These past months have shown me everything I want in life, and it all begins and ends with you." Her breath caught as he slid from the sofa to one knee before her. "I love you more than I thought possible," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You've brought light back into my world, given me purpose beyond my work, made me dream of a future filled with shared mornings and evenings just like this. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy spilled down Daisy's cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "yes, Tucker James, I will marry you." His smile outshone the fire as he reached into his pocket, producing a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "It was my grandmother's," he explained, sliding it onto her finger. "I've carried it all the way from my ranch, hoping beyond hope you'd accept it." "It's beautiful," Daisy said, admiring the delicate ring. "Perfect." Tucker rose, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. His kiss was a promise, a beginning, a declaration of all they would build together. "When?" he asked when they finally parted. "How soon can I make you Mrs. James?" "Spring," Daisy decided. "When the wildflowers bloom. We can marry here in Johnson City, then travel to your ranch together." "Our ranch," Tucker corrected. "Our home." The news of their engagement spread through Johnson City like wildfire, met with universal approval and more than a few satisfied nods from those who had watched their courtship unfold. Martha Whitaker was particularly pleased, taking full credit for introducing them. "If I hadn't sent him to fix your roof, you'd both still be alone and miserable," she declared during the engagement party the town insisted on throwing. "You're right," Tucker acknowledged, his arm around Daisy's waist. "We owe you a debt we can never repay." "Nonsense," Martha said with a wink. "Just name your first daughter after me, and we'll call it even." Winter settled over Texas, forcing Tucker to remain in Johnson City rather than returning to his ranch as planned. He took a temporary position at the livery stable, working with the owner's horses while sending instructions to his brother about managing the ranch through the cold months. Daisy continued teaching, now wearing Tucker's ring proudly and sharing their plans with her delighted students. Each evening, the engaged couple spent time together, sometimes with friends, often just the two of them, discussing their future and learning the rhythms of daily life together. Christmas brought a special joy, their first holiday as a couple. They exchanged modest gifts, a hand-knitted scarf from Daisy, a carved wooden jewelry box from Tucker, but the greatest present was the knowledge that all future Christmases would be shared. February brought wedding preparations in earnest. Daisy worked on her dress with help from the town seamstress, while Tucker coordinated with his brother to ensure the ranch would be ready for their arrival. They decided on an April wedding when the Texas wildflowers would be at their peak. "Are you nervous?" Martha asked Daisy as they prepared wedding invitations. "Not about marrying Tucker," Daisy replied honestly. "Though sometimes I worry about being a rancher's wife. It's so different from teaching." "You'll learn," Martha assured her, "and you'll still be able to teach the children in the area. Maybe even start a proper school near the ranch someday." The idea took root in Daisy's mind, blossoming into a vision of their future that combined both their dreams, Tucker's thriving ranch and her passion for education. As March turned to April, nature cooperated beautifully with their plans. Bluebonnets, Indian paintbrushes, and evening primroses carpeted the hills around Johnson City, creating a natural decoration no florist could match. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. Daisy prepared in Martha's home, donning the ivory dress she had carefully crafted over winter evenings. Her honey-brown hair was arranged with wildflowers, and James's mother's locket, her something old, hung around her neck. Tucker waited at the small church, more nervous than he'd ever been facing stampeding cattle. When the doors opened and Daisy appeared, radiant in the afternoon sunlight, his anxiety melted into pure joy. She walked toward him with steady steps, her eyes never leaving his, each step bringing her closer to their shared future. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful, their vows exchanged with voices strong with conviction. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Tucker's kiss was both tender and promising, sealing their commitment before the entire community. The celebration afterwards spilled into the town square, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed twice their number of guests. As twilight fell, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the festivities. Tucker led Daisy in a dance, holding her close as they swayed. "Mrs. James," he murmured against her ear, "you've made me the happiest man in Texas." Daisy smiled up at him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "And you've given me something I never thought I'd find again, a future filled with love." Later that night, in the privacy of the hotel room Tucker had secured for their wedding night, they discovered each other fully for the first time, their passion tempered by tenderness, their union both physical and spiritual. As they lay entwined, Daisy marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. "It all began with a leaking roof," she whispered, tracing patterns on Tucker's chest. He captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "No," he said softly. "It began the moment I saw you hammering those shingles, refusing to be defeated by a storm. That's when I knew you were a woman worth knowing. And worth fixing a roof for," she teased. "Worth anything," he said seriously. "Everything." Morning found them reluctant to leave their sanctuary, but eager to begin their journey to the ranch that would become their home. The townsfolk gathered to see them off, showering them with flower petals and good wishes as they climbed into the wagon Tucker had prepared. "Visit soon," Martha called as they departed. "Don't forget your promise about that baby girl." Daisy blushed while Tucker laughed, waving to the crowd as they pulled away from Johnson City. Not goodbye, but until next time. The journey to the ranch took 5 days, each night spent camping under the stars, each day bringing them closer to their new life together. Daisy treasured these moments of transition, storing memories of their conversations, their laughter, and their increasingly confident intimacy. When they finally crested the hill overlooking Tucker's property, Daisy gasped at the beauty spread before her. The ranch house nestled against a backdrop of rolling hills, a stream winding through pastures dotted with cattle and horses. Wildflowers similar to those in Johnson City carpeted the meadows, creating a familiar welcome. "It's beautiful," she breathed, "even more than I imagined from your descriptions." Tucker squeezed her hand. "Welcome home, Mrs. James." His brother Roger and the ranch hands had prepared for their arrival, decorating the freshly painted house with more wildflowers, and a hand-carved sign reading "Welcome Home, Tucker and Daisy," hanging over the porch. The next weeks were a period of adjustment, as Daisy learned the rhythms of ranch life while making the house truly their own. She arranged her books on shelves Tucker built specially for her, planted a garden with vegetables and flowers, and explored the surrounding countryside on a gentle mare Tucker had trained for her. By midsummer, they had fallen into comfortable patterns. Tucker managed the ranch with skill and dedication, returning each evening to share meals and conversation with his wife. Daisy transformed their home into a haven of warmth and learning, even beginning to teach reading and arithmetic to the children of nearby ranchers once a week. In late August, as they sat on their porch watching a spectacular sunset, Daisy turned to Tucker with news she'd been harboring for several days. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice slightly tremulous. Tucker looked at her with immediate concern. "What is it, my love?" "Are you unwell?" Daisy shook her head, taking his hand and placing it gently over her still flat stomach. "Not unwell at all, but it seems we might need to prepare a nursery before winter arrives." Tucker's expression transformed from concern to wonder. "A baby? We're going to have a baby?" "Yes," Daisy confirmed, her eyes shining. "Dr. Hernandez in town confirmed it yesterday. We should expect our child in early spring." Tucker whooped with joy, lifting Daisy from her chair and spinning her around before suddenly stopping, setting her down gently. "I shouldn't jostle you." "Is that dangerous? What did the doctor say about?" Daisy laughed, placing her fingers against his lips. "I'm pregnant, my love, not made of china. The doctor said I'm in excellent health and should continue normal activities." Tucker gathered her close, his cheek resting against her hair. "A family," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Our family. The first of many children, I hope," Daisy said softly. "This house deserves to be filled with laughter." The months of Daisy's pregnancy passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Tucker proved himself an attentive, if sometimes overly cautious, husband, insisting on taking over more strenuous chores and reading every book on childbirth he could find. Daisy wrote regularly to Martha and her friends in Johnson City, sharing news of her pregnancy and ranch life. In February, with the baby's arrival approaching, Tucker's sister Catherine came from Dallas to stay with them, bringing her experience as a mother of 3 to ease Daisy's anxieties. On a clear March morning, with wildflowers just beginning to bloom across the hills, Daisy went into labor. Tucker paced anxiously outside their bedroom while Catherine and the midwife from town attended his wife. Hours passed, marked by Daisy's increasingly frequent cries and Tucker's fervent prayers. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the windows, a new cry joined the chorus, the lusty wail of their firstborn child. Catherine opened the door, her face flushed with happy exhaustion. "Congratulations, brother," she said. "You have a son." Tucker entered the room with reverent steps to find Daisy propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat but her smile radiant as she cradled a small bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "Come meet your son," she invited, her voice tired but joyful. Tucker approached the bed, sitting carefully beside his wife and peering at the tiny red face of their child. The baby's eyes were closed, his miniature features scrunched in sleepy contentment after his ordeal. "He's perfect," Tucker whispered, reaching out to touch a tiny fist that immediately grabbed his finger with surprising strength. "Strong, too." "Matthew James," Daisy said. "After your father and mine." Tucker nodded, his throat too tight for words. He leaned forward, pressing a kiss to Daisy's forehead, then to his son's. "Thank you," he finally managed, "for everything." Parenthood brought new challenges and deeper joys to their marriage. Matthew proved to be a good-natured baby, quickly adapting to the rhythms of ranch life. By his first birthday, he was toddling after Tucker in the yard and reaching for Daisy's books with curious hands. When Matthew was 18 months old, Daisy discovered she was expecting their second child. This pregnancy was easier than the first, her body knowing the way now. In December 1875, Martha James joined their family, fulfilling the promise made to her namesake in Johnson City. The years that followed brought prosperity to the James Ranch. Tucker's careful management and innovative breeding practices increased their herd and reputation. Daisy established a small school in a converted barn, teaching not only their own children but those from neighboring ranches. Her methods, combining traditional subjects with practical knowledge of nature and agriculture, gained recognition throughout the county. By 1880, the James family had expanded again with the arrival of twins, Samuel and Sarah. Their home, once a bachelor's modest dwelling, had grown to accommodate their family and frequent visitors. The original structure remained, though including the roof Tucker had repaired all those years ago in Johnson City. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tucker surprised Daisy with a special gift, a new schoolhouse built on their property, complete with desks, books, and a small bell tower. "For the teacher who stole my heart," he said, presenting her with the key. "May you continue changing lives as profoundly as you changed mine." Daisy, overcome with emotion, could only embrace him in response, her actions speaking what words could not adequately express. That evening, after the children were asleep, they sat together on their porch swing, a ritual maintained through a decade of marriage. The stars spread across the Texas sky like diamonds scattered on velvet, the night air carrying the scent of wildflowers and promise. "Are you happy, Mrs. James?" Tucker asked, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. Daisy looked at their intertwined fingers work, roughened now from years of ranching and child-rearing, but still fitting perfectly together. "Immeasurably," she answered truthfully. "Are you?" Tucker's smile was her answer, the same smile that had captivated her when he first rode into her yard. "I found everything I never knew I was searching for when your roof started leaking," he said. "A partner, a purpose, a family, a life built on love and respect." Daisy leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing over her. "And to think I once believed love would never come my way again. Aren't you glad I was persistent enough to stay for breakfast?" Tucker teased. "Every single day," Daisy replied, turning her face up for his kiss, certain in the knowledge that their greatest adventure, loving each other, had only just begun. As the years continued to unfold, the James family remained a cornerstone of their community. Matthew grew into a thoughtful young man who combined his father's ranching skills with his mother's love of learning. Martha, spirited and determined, became known for her horsemanship and artistic talents. The twins, Samuel and Sarah, though identical in appearance, developed distinct personalities, Sam quiet and observant, Sarah outgoing and adventurous. In 1885, Daisy's school was officially recognized by the state of Texas, allowing her to hire additional teachers and expand their curriculum. Tucker, meanwhile, had become a respected voice in cattlemen's associations, advocating for sustainable practices and fair treatment of workers. Their home remained a place of welcome for travelers, neighbors, and friends. Martha Whittaker visited regularly until her passing in 1890, spending her final years regaling the James children with stories of how she had brought their parents together. Through droughts and abundant years, through illnesses and celebrations, Tucker and Daisy's partnership only strengthened. Their love, built on friendship and mutual respect, weathered life's inevitable storms just as securely as the roof Tucker had repaired all those years ago. On quiet evenings, they still sat together on their porch, sometimes in companionable silence, other times sharing their thoughts and dreams. And often, Daisy would remind Tucker of the day he had appeared in her yard, a stranger offering help when she needed it most. "I was so determined to refuse," she would say with a laugh. "So convinced I needed no one." And Tucker would always reply with the same words, his eyes as full of love as they had been on their wedding day. "And I was so determined to stay for breakfast."